Welcome to tonight's webinar, Lessons from the Land, the cropping session. Tonight we will hear from 3 New South Wales cropping producers about their cropping operations, their experiences managing drought, and some of the lessons learnt along the way. My name is Kate Pearce. I'm the Drought Adoption Officer for the New South Wales Local Land Services. This webinar is brought to you by the Drought Adoption Officer program, which has received funding from the Australian Government's Future Drought Fund through the Southern New South Wales Innovation Hub and the Southern Queensland Northern New South Wales Innovation Hub. The acknowledgement. Local Land Services acknowledges that it stands on the country which always was and always will be Aboriginal land. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land and waters, and we show our respects for elders past, present and emerging. We are committed to providing places in which Aboriginal people are included socially, culturally and economically through thoughtful and collaborative approaches to our work. Just a bit of housekeeping for tonight's webinar. This session is being recorded and will be available on our YouTube channel to view later. We encourage that you ask questions throughout the session using only the Q&A function, not the chat function on your screen. And please include which producer panelist you are directing your question towards. We will then answer these questions toward the end of the presentation. At the conclusion of tonight's webinar, so please fill out our post-event survey, which we will show you after the Q&A session at the end. We value your feedback and this helps us to deliver the content you like to see in the future. I will now go on to introduce tonight's panellists. Firstly, we will hear from David Gooden. David is the director of a family farming business, A Good Co Farm. And I'm sorry, David, if I've said that wrong. I'm sure you can correct me a bit later. He is the manager of the crop production and dryland property, which produces canola, wheat, barley, legumes, and green manure crops under a controlled traffic farming system with full stubble retention. The business also has internal trucking enterprise and Gooden Welding, which makes chemical batching trailers. David has experience in ag business supply chain, working with stock and station agents before joining Dow Getty after leaving school in 97. After leaving school, and in 97 completed a Bachelor of Applied Science in Agriculture. Since then, he has been actively involved in the family business. In 2010, David was awarded a Nuffield Scholarship and travelled for 16 weeks to 12 different countries studying global agriculture and spray application technology, regulation, testing and training. David is married to his wife Heidi, who is also an agronomist at the Delta Ag based in Lockhart. He's passionate about the future of agriculture and wants to see rural communities grow and develop. Then we will hear from Jen Jeffries. Jen went home in 2005 to Weebola Moree. After a stint up north, completing a business degree at Orange Ag and meat trading in Penrith, in 2010, she moved over 1,000 kilometres away to her husband's family farm, Delegate, where she continues to commute between the 2 family properties from one end of the state to the other. In 2019, she officially took over the management of Norland Pastoral. The team manages over 10,000 hectares, of which 7,000 hectares is cropped and the rest is grazed. And thirdly, tonight we will hear from John Stevenson. John has spent the majority of his working life as a Wiriwiri cropping employee, commencing as an assistant farm manager at Englefield Plains in 97. John quickly graduated to management and spent 2 years managing Wyobe in southern Queensland. John spent 20 years managing Orange Park in the New South Wales Riverina before transitioning to a role as the Southern Regional Manager in 21. John has a passion for optimizing systems and efficiencies and has a strong understanding of the key drivers for investor returns in broadacre production agriculture. So thank you to our three panelists for joining us tonight. I will now hand over to our first panelist, David, and start with his questions. So David, welcome to tonight's webinar. To start us off, can you tell us a bit about your farms and provide an overview of the main drought management strategies that you have utilised on your properties during dry seasons?
Thanks, Kate. David Gooden, Goodco Farm. It's made up of 4 families. We work as a collaboration across 4,000 hectares in Lockhart at southern New South Wales. We're all dryland farming. We grow canola, wheat, barley and legumes. Our annual rainfall ranges in the last 20 years from about 170 mils in 07 to 950 odd mils in 22. And that reflects in our average wheat yields from about 0.5 tonne of a hectare to over 5 tonne a hectare average yield across the farm, wheat yields across the farm. So some of the drought strategies or risk management strategies that we put in place, and number one is about planning and having a good plan. And the main important thing about planning is having a plan to change. So knowing what changes we can make that will have the least amount of compromises, and whether that's we compromise on weeds, we want to be sowing our highest productive land, we want to be sowing where there's subsoil moisture or high fertility, so we want to make sure we're getting those the right crop grown at the right time in those important places. So this year, with the lack of sowing moisture at sowing time in April, we just changed the seeding order. The plan to start just got changed around, and the important thing there was to chase moisture so we can get some crop up out of the ground on the little bit of moisture that we did have. So we changed the order of sowing, went and sowed some paddocks and got canola emerged early. And the other change we made this year was just changing our crop type, so pulling canola out of the system in one block and sowing it down to barley, which was also on dry this year. The other key drought management strategy is just continuing to improve. So we need to invest in what's important on the farm, whether that's equipment, improving the landscape, and that's just to try and reduce the risk of anything going wrong, risk of lack of rain. Farming is a long-term goal, a long-term plan, so we need to look after what we have. And the third main point I'd like to make was understanding our costs, whether that's through benchmarking or whatever we need to do, just understand what costs we can cut that will have the least impact on our bottom line and on the overall farm performance over the long term. So they are the 3 main points I wanted to make, Kate, to start us off.
Thanks, David. They're great. And that probably perfectly sets us up for the next question, which you have kind of touched on, David. So what are the benefits of early or late sowing or using short duration varieties during drought years? You have mentioned that you do change crop types and timing. So can you just elaborate a bit more about, I suppose, the benefits around doing that?
For us, it's about maximising yield and even biomass. So, it's matching the moisture or the crop type to the season. If we've got moisture, we want to be sowing a longer season variety to maximise the yield and biomass potential. And then if we're dry sowing something, we might have to sow something shorter season because the rain mightn't come for a while. So we need to sow those shorter season varieties to make sure they're not flowering late into springtime, because biomass is really important. Sometimes we can grow plenty of biomass but can't grow yield, and so biomass becomes important because there's a hay option available, and especially in dry years when people are after feed and hay, it becomes a worthwhile proposition sometimes to make hay.
Thank you, David. That is a worthwhile option for sure, and obviously a good drought management strategy to have for making hay. I suppose in recent times, or even this year, is that planning out with making any hay?
Not this year, only for it being dry. There was no other need to cut hay. Last year we had frost, so that was gave us another reason to take that risk and cut hay. This year we just let the crops go, and we'll see what happens. It's been cool enough, and it was going to rain, so yeah, we didn't pull that trigger this year.
Thank you, David. Thank you. Our next technical questions. How do weather-based forecasting tools and ag technology help support your drought management plans, David?
Yeah, really it's about helping us to plan and prepare. So there's plenty of tools and there's plenty of data that we have now from the history, and that helps us to estimate our paddock's potential, looking back at past years. We also use spreadsheets and just look at what's happened before in the past and try and predict different seasons and how they and the outcome to see whether that helps us for this year's planning.
Thank you, David. Is there a favourite tool, like weather platform, or tool that you prefer to use that really helps?
No, there's quite a lot. Climate's a really good one for looking at past history and knowing what's happened in the past. But no, there's a lot of weather forecasting apps that we just got to go through and work out what's best for us. But Climate's a good one for looking at past things for our local area, past events.
For sure. Thank you. David, what land preparation techniques do you use to help conserve soil moisture on your farm?
Retaining stubble's the most important thing, Kate, for us. So growing ground cover, retaining stubble, in-a-row sowing, and even controlled traffic farming has been a really important part of the process over the last 20 years while we've been doing it. It's part of what we do now. So it's one of those things we often forget about, but it's part of the system. It's reducing our compaction, and it's making our soil health better in the cropping area. So I think that's they're really good tools that we use to maintain ground cover and build soil organic matter.
Yeah, that's great, David. Thank you. This next question is probably one that will feature throughout the whole series of tonight's webinar. But David, what is the top 3 actions that you have taken that have created drought resilience in your farm operation and farming operation? I suppose previous droughts may have influence on this answer. And yeah, you may be able to elaborate on one particular lesson that really stands out that you've learned, good or bad, it doesn't matter. But yeah, it would be love to hear what you have to share.
Yeah, well, good rotation, building soil organic matter and moisture, and that has probably been the secret to our resilience, I guess, because if you've got a good rotation and a spread of different crop types, it's actually spreading risk. And some years you benefit from those crops over the next 3 or 4 years. And some examples of that have been when we've brown manured some crops. We've been able to see those benefits of that one crop in the next 3 seasons in providing either nitrogen or more moisture for the following crop. So it's benefited in either growing more biomass or better yields in those tighter years where we retain that moisture from one brown manure crop. So that's one example. Minimum till and stubble retention is certainly the other action we've definitely taken, and having good equipment. So in order to sow and germinate crops, you need to understand how your equipment works, and knowing where you're putting your seed and getting that seed to germinate on minimum moisture is a really important feature in our environment. Just to get crop emerged and crop growing is a really good tool of achieving high yields and being more resilient. So getting your seeder to place the seed in the right place, whether that's deep or shallow, for dry sowing purposes, having the right equipment and understanding how it works is a really good tool, I think. So there are some 3 ones for us. Kate?
Thank you, David. That's great. I will now go on to some more personal-based questions. Looking back at major droughts you've managed through, is there a particular moment or decision that stands out as a turning point for you, either practically or personally?
I couldn't think of one, Kate, but it's really about continuing to evolve and learn, and it's really about making good decisions in tough times, and that's about either taking risks or trying to remove risks from the business and from the environment we're in. So I think it's about trying to evolve and learn as we go along and make good decisions.
Yeah, some very good points, David. Now, David, I have heard that the community in Lockhart is a nice and strong one. What do you think is important to keep people connected in times when seasons get dry and tough?
Yeah, well, John will be able to relate to some of these, but certainly coming together as a community, as a group of farmers or the like, as a sporting group or whatever. Lockhart's been lucky. We've had an ag bureau, which is our farmer group, which still continues to be active and be fairly social, which helps bring people together. We've got active farmers. I know John was involved in active farmers in Lockhart, and we've got one at Osborne now. So doing little things like that is important to keep our mind active and thinking about away from the farm.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's really, really good to hear. I will give it one last personal question to round out your part of tonight's panelist webinar, David. I suppose this one is, how do you maintain focus on long-term goals such as, planning and I suppose maintaining productivity in the thick of, a grueling drought and maintaining that positivity in times when it is really tough?
Yeah, I think understanding that farming is a long-term game, a long-term plan, and I think the main important thing is we still need to invest in what's important, and so whether that's people or weeds or ground cover to improve soil organic matter, improving our understanding of finance. It's all those little things and that evolve over time. But the need to continue to invest is important, I think, and I think that's what sort of drives us to keep improving, is just to keep improving and work together to try and make things better for the next time.
Yeah, thank you, David. That's great. If anyone has any questions, like I said at the start, please pop them in the Q&A function and address them to David, and we will come back to them at the end. Next, we will hear from Jen Jeffries. So Jen, thank you and welcome to tonight's webinar. Jen, to get us started, can you provide an overview of your property and walk us through some of the key strategies you've used during drought periods to keep things running?
Thanks, Kate. Yeah, well, we have the 2 main properties based, one's at Benall, about 10 kilometres east of Bogabilla, which has approximately 3,500 hectares of cropping. We have our stud breeders based on that property and the goats and some trade cattle as seasons permit. And at Weebolla, which surrounds Moree to the north and east, we have that 3,500 hectares of cropping. We'll have our 59th annual bull sale in 26. We have trade cattle, and we do actually have 1,000 head accredited feedlot, but grain prices have been fairly handy over the last 4 years. So we've sort of changed that enterprise slightly and used it more as a management tool. But yeah, over the drought strategies, I think, I mean, obviously every drought and farm and family are different. We've actually been around since we've had Weebola since 1873, and Banal since the 1890s, and we've had a lot of adaptations over the years, well over a century, and yeah, I think drought's always good for. I mean, you should be doing this constantly, but a drought, especially that really last big one, was a great opportunity for us to sort of reassess where the business was financially and assessing your team's capacity and skill set, and then also your infrastructure and machinery. Ideally, you have this plan ticking along constantly, but the last one gave us a really good kick up the arse to get things happening. But obviously, we really, well, during the drought, the 5-year rotation did go out the window, but we were able to reset that and get everything back in order with that winter cereal, winter pulse, winter cereal, Longfellow summer crop, double and then double crop after the summer crop, which I think that's one of the biggest things. You really need to have your business set up to really pounce on those good years when they do happen, because that's where you need to average it out, the good years over those bad years. So your soil profile is crucial. Obviously, annual rainfall has a big factor to do with that, but you can't control that one. So the stubble retention and fallow management, really helps with that. Making sure you have that profile ready to go, and it can definitely be the difference between having a crop or not in low decile years. I mean, this year in particular, it was very strange. Weebola had one of its better seasons, although but in January there was no profile, so I thought it was going to be, we were going to have more than our 20% Longfellow happening, but as it turned out, we got quite good rain at Weebola and Banal. Yeah, it was just literally that we had that plan ready to jump on it when the rain came, because it didn't come to the 11th hour, but we were able to have, we had all our infrastructure, all our machinery ready to go. The last drought, actually, that's another big thing. We invested heavily in, we identified some of our weaknesses as being our storage, our on-farm storage. We put up 4 big 1,800 ton silos. We increased our shed capacity to, machinery is just getting, and secondhand machinery was just getting, well, it wasn't during the drought. We invested in some secondhand machinery then, but it's, it's so expensive to have it sitting out in the sun. Yeah, just getting on top of all that infrastructure upgrades and making sure that everything was ready to go, because we really, the last 4 years have been pretty manic. We haven't had a second to scratch ourselves, really. Just capitalizing. We've had quite a few years of double cropping, which is not, we don't necessarily happen every year, but you want to make the most of it when you can, because it's, who knows when the next drought around the corner is for us. Certainly we saw that in the south. I've heard people say that it was worse than the 2019-2020 drought, which yeah, that's huge. And yeah, and I suppose, yeah, and we also identified, you can't do it all at once, and of course in a drought you do want to minimize your costs, but then you've got to weigh up, where you're going to get your biggest bang for your buck. And we also had our wish list where we once we've done a fair few years with bags, we'd earned the right to invest in silos, and we ended up this last year investing in a second-hand header that was on our wish list this last season. With the costs getting up to over $750 an hour for contractors, that those last year we had a lot of crop down, and it was really, really expensive. So we've got that's paid dividends with this year with good harvesting conditions, although we did have rain last night. But yeah, it's and yeah, just identifying where those where you want to spend the money, whether it's in fertilizer or doing all your soil testing and those sorts of things, having that all in order and up to speed. But that moisture retention with the stubble management and knowing your rotation and your plan and getting those residuals down early. One year we were a bit disorganized, and the fallow sprays that we did were ridiculous. It really is a huge saving being organized and timing, obviously. That's another example with the rainfall. You can't control the timing of the rainfall. We managed to get away with it on Banal, where we had some of our best yields ever, and our less ore country, our lighter soils, which we took a risk planting because you can't hold the profile there. But yeah, we were able to get over 6 tons to the hectare, and that was a record on that sort of country, and it was just all back to good management with the really controlling those weeds over summer and stubble and doing everything that we could possibly do in terms of what we could control.
Yeah, wow, Jen, thank you. That's an awesome, I suppose, overview. I suppose that in the farming game, they say, what is the definition of luck? And it's prior preparation meets opportunity equals luck. So that little, I suppose, nugget of knowledge where you've talked about how things worked out this year sounds like, yeah, you had it on the money. Really, really good to hear. Jen, being, I suppose, having a foot in the south and the north, you're a very good candidate, and so's everybody on this panelist tonight, to talk about, I suppose, the different sort of cropping systems. But being in the north and the varying soil types, this will change obviously with varying soil types. But Jen, when the soil moisture isn't quite high enough, how do you make the hard call to plant or not? And we talk about, obviously, the bucket being full, being the soil profile, and the water profile in the soil being really full or being really low. And so when it's really low and there isn't, water available to plant, that makes a decision easy to not do it. And obviously when it's high, it makes it very easy to do it. So that middle ground is really tricky. Jen, can you just walk us through what you guys do?
Yeah, I think I did allude to it a little bit.
You did.
With that last answer, but yeah, I mean, this year was actually a classic example of that. But I think having that real intimate knowledge of your soil types and that order of whether you plant which section of your property first, and knowing that some may seal off and some holds the moisture better if you get rain, and whether you go shallow or deep. It's a constant juggle and reassessment. We've got agronomists, but we've got a great team that's been with us for a few years now, and every season seems to be different. But yeah, I think you just and you got to back yourself and take risks. We're in agriculture, but also knowing, only how much risk you can take. Yeah, I think knowing the big thing. I've seen some desperate decisions being made for desperate outcomes. I think you have to know your risk profile. We are an ag, and we actually take. I don't actually gamble, but ag is a huge risk, really. But it's calculated, and just having that intimate knowledge of your people and what you're working with. Only you can sort of make that call. But what else have I've got
Jen,
yeah, and you don't know it. Yeah, you don't always
sorry, you
get
go.
it right. I mean, yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, we were held off planting because the profile wasn't full, and we just thought, no, we'll wait. And of course, the neighbour that went ahead, you know, they got a freak storm, and you know they won on that one. And you know, and then we've had other instances where we've had luck where we got wiped out by hail on our dryland cotton one year, and we got the insurance, and then pounced on a mung bean crop, which was a short one, and then went straight into barley. So you sort of take the wins when you get them, and you just learn from you learn every time. But I don't think you can be afraid to have a crack, but within reason.
Yeah, exactly, Jen. Thank you. Jen, with, I suppose, all the weather-based forecasting tools and ag technology, there's a lot of things that flood the market in terms of, you know, NDVI maps and, you know, probes and all of the above. What I suppose are a few that you like to use that you find really helpful in making decisions?
Yeah, well, we use AgWorld. I found the NDVI really helpful with yield estimates in conjunction with on the ground for insurance and planning harvest logistics. And the moisture probe. We're part of this farming group down here, MFS Monero Farming Systems, and they actually have soil moisture probes located all over the Monero, and it's a really useful tool for pasture budgeting. But of course, all the irrigators up north have one in every paddock. And you know, in individual fields, I should say. We've got a weather station. I've got the Goanna Thing app on my phone, which I look up.
Yeah.
But one died with the last 4G upgrade, which I haven't upgraded it. But that's annoying. We only anyway. But yeah, I think those soil moisture probes, they're a great tool. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Jen, I suppose I'll get to what are the top 3 actions that you've taken that have created drought resilience in your farming operation. And I suppose using the dreaded 2019 drought, none of us forget it. We've all got PTSD. I suppose there could be some top actions that have come out, even if it's 2. Yeah, what stands out to you?
Number one, sort of the planning and involving all your key people so they're up to speed with your thought process. And I always value I mean, obviously me being based over 1,000 kilometers away, they're the ones doing it. So I always value their contribution, and more often than not, I'm getting phone calls now where they're initiating, I was thinking we should do X, Y, Z because of this, you know, if it's making their life more efficient or easier, I'm all for it. So that leads into the second point of, you know, empowering your people, and that also plays into the third one with keeping informed and getting out and about and talking to other farmers. This MFS group down here is really proactive, and it's sort of a combination of graziers and cropping. So that's been good, being from a mixed farming operation. I mean, we don't have any sheep up north, but you know, you always pick up and learn different things and different industries. And so attending field days is getting out, very important. So I think that was, I mean, going from one end of the state to the other, you know, in my situation, and I go via my brother-in-law and sister at Narromine. They're always pushing boundaries, doing things differently. So that's getting out and about.
That peer-to-peer learning really is important for sure. Thanks, Jen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I did the EDP, the Bravo EDP.
Yes.
During as well, because it got you thinking about the future, because you do get really stuck in a rut, just thinking of the now, especially if you're constantly having to feed livestock every day, day in, day out. Yeah, that Groundhog Day.
For sure, Jen. Thank you. I will run on to some personal questions. During long dry stretches, what helps to you to keep turning up each day? Are there any small routines or habits that have helped you stay motivated during a really hard time?
Having 3 kids, don't have a choice. Having to manage them and being part of another family operations, being part of the 2 family operations has been insightful. There's no downtime. It's constant. So, but I mean, certainly, exercise has always been a big thing. Exercise is big. And talking, I've got 3 sisters, and one's in HR, one's in finance, and the other one's on a farm. So yeah, talking's always good. I'm good at that.
Yeah, no, it's important. Thank you. Thank you very much. What is the process for involving your team, family, or advisors in your drought decision making? How do you make sure that decisions are collectively understood and executable?
Well, I mean, it's just sort of business as usual, whether you're in a drought or not. You know, we have our weekly meeting, and then we have our strategy, which we're meant to do every quarter, but that's still a work in process, but it's better than nothing. And I've just engaged someone to give me a hand with some reports, some other things, which, you know, sort of will be a one-off, but get us on a leg up. Sort of started benchmarking, but yeah, it's a good thing to do, but you know, there's only so many things you can get done.
For sure. Knowing when to outsource is really important, for sure. Yeah. I think that poses a really good point, Jen. God forbid, when you think about going into another drought in the future, what would you change, and how you manage your own well-being to avoid burnout or fatigue? I'm sorry, it kind of sounds the same as something you've answered before, but yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think having been through a few droughts now, you do get more confident with your decision-making process, and you learn that, you know, there are things beyond your control, and whether you stress or not, or whether you have a meltdown or not, it doesn't really change anything. So it's best to save your energy. And, you know, I think letting go of that, this is for the females out there, that mother type guilt feeling where you can't be everywhere and do everything and be everything for everyone all at once. So learning to prioritize better and sort of knowing what's important. You know, sometimes the old family gets shafted. But then, that's, you know, they're the important ones. Yeah.
For sure, Jen. Thank you. Thank you very much for your answers and your participation. Once again, everybody, if you could please hold off your questions and pop them in the Q&A for Jen, and we will answer at the rounding out of the webinar. Thank you again, Jen. Now, welcome John Stevenson. Lucky last. So John, give us a bit more information about you. John has a very extensive background in cropping in both the north and the southern parts of New South Wales. So John, can you tell us a bit more about your career, I suppose, in working at Wurundjeri, and provide an overview of your drought management strategies that I'm sure have served you for many years?
Thanks, Kay, and thanks, Dave and Jen. So John Stevenson, I've been with Wurundjeri Cropping since the business was set up in early 1997. as Kate said in the introduction, I've done a bit of time around Junee, up at Dalby for a couple of years, and then 20 years living next door to David at Lockhart. And in the last 4 years, I've been the regional manager for the southern region. So the Warrakirri cropping business is around 150,000 arable hectares. We have a major presence in WA, our southern region, which I look after, and then the northern region. So we also have country at Bogabilla, Cropper Creek, and Dalby. That's our northern farms, and yeah, we really are an investor first business, which we have to be. If we're not investor first, our investor will take their money elsewhere. Doesn't matter whether it's a drought or a good year, we're still expected to provide returns. Our 100% owner is the Australian Rest Super business, which is the retail employees super trust. Yeah, they've been with us since the beginning, and we are the only agricultural investment that they have as a business. Yeah, we're a bit of a highlight for them, because we're probably one of the only sustainable businesses that they have a focus on, something that they can actually see, feel, and touch. And we are the only business that employs people that Rest Super own, which is pretty amazing for a business that's the Rest Super fund is over $1.2 billion. So it's a big deal. Yeah, so I've been through quite a few droughts with the business. Early 2000s and the late 2010s. Had some fairly big shockers through there. Probably learned enough to muck it up the next time one comes along, like everybody does in farming. I didn't put any money on any horses today in the cup, because I think we do enough gambling every day. But yeah, it's lots of things we've learned, but some really important things for our business. The main one's been our geographic diversity. So we've invested in farms that don't have a link. When we have a climate disaster in one region, that we have a sort of uncorrelated regions. So if you look at our southern region compared to the Esperance support zone in Western Australia, very uncorrelated. Like, it's very unusual for there to be a drought in those two regions at the same time. We used to be an East Coast only business, and a few El Ninos really bit us badly as a farming business. They cost us a lot of money because we all had a drought in the same year. So it's not something that everyone can do, but even within your own region, even on a micro scale, geographic diversity can provide a lot of upside and a lot of resilience, because storm rains will come through different patches at different times. It might be easy to manage one big block in one place, but often, in a time of drought, the whole place is in drought. Whereas if you've got that bit of a spread, often you'll catch some rain on one part of the farm that you'll miss on others. So that it's a bit swings and roundabouts. Crop diversity has been a big focus of ours for a long time. I've seen a lot of corporate enterprises chase dollars, chase profits, as far as chasing two pillar crops that might be just wheat canola, and it doesn't take many years for that system to fall over, not only from a weed management point of view, but cost of production. And when you start driving high cost of production, your resilience in a drought drops even further. So we want to be building background nitrogen through pulse in our rotation. We want to try and maintain ground cover. Ground cover is massively important for drought resilience. And then as everybody's got, we've got a cost control challenge. Like, nothing's getting cheaper. And that hurts a lot more in a poor production year, because crop prices haven't risen much, but crop inputs certainly have.
Thank you, John. I love the hedging your bets and making a plan to change a plan. That is farming and agriculture. John, how do you use financial analysis to inform decision making, both before and during droughts? What are the key financial measures that producers should understand before making decisions around whether or not to plant, or whatever the decision may be? But obviously this is in relation to cropping.
Yeah. So we're probably very lucky as a business to have such intimate understanding of our return on investment or our return on assets managed, because it is how we're assessed by the investor. I wish every farmer had the capacity and the insights that we have in our business, because from way back, we start doing our budgets for the next year. Well, we've already got our budgets set now for next year. A lot of our budgets revolve around, we've pre-sold grain, up to 18 months, 2 years in advance. We understand where our crop margins are going to be and our return on investment from every paddock and every crop type. And so we make a lot of decisions around where we go based on that, while trying to keep a pretty resilient rotation. We don't chase rainbows much, but we do have a very strong understanding of which are the right crop types in each region that are going to give us the returns we need. There are 10 weather deciles every year. We are going to get a decile 1 somewhere every year. We're going to get a decile 10 somewhere every year. So it's all around just making sure we're understanding from the start what triggers we need to pull at what times of the year to minimize loss if we're heading that direction.
Yeah, thank you, John. What are the top 3 actions that have been taken that have created drought resilience in your time with the company?
Well, like I already said, Kate, the geographic diversity is our key one. We've sold quite a few farms and invested elsewhere, but that's a pretty big thing. Like that's something that not everybody would have an appetite for, but it certainly has assisted us a heap. Soil amelioration has been a huge one for us in building resilience. So addressing soil constraints that help us increase the size of our soil water bucket. So we've had a pretty extensive gypsum program on a lot of our sodic or heavier paddocks and blocks, and certainly done a lot with liming, because if we can increase our soil root zone and the depth of root zone, we're obviously increasing the capacity to source water from deeper in the soil profile and to store more water deeper. So that's been a huge focus and has provided some amazing returns. Like where we've been doing deep ripping in the Mallee, we've essentially pushed our lentil yields up by 0.8 to a tonne to the hectare, which in a crop that's sometimes worth $900 a tonne is huge. So that's been a big strategy of ours to help with our resilience, and then also getting the capacity to procure inputs when they're well priced as well. So building chemical storage and fertilizer storage that we can actually capture benefit when we see it, and it's all worked through on a financial analysis, the cost of carry and everything else. But we've had good years where we haven't been able to get enough fertilizer, and it's certainly been very, very expensive. So they've burned us badly, because whilst we've got to manage for droughts, we've also got to make sure we capture upside in good years, because there's no point just averaging in the good year, because you haven't fed the crop well enough. So you've got to take the highs when they come, as well as manage the lows when you've got them in front of you.
Yeah, John, very, very good points and advice there. John, for listeners now and in the future, I suppose top tips around management and catch-ups. Like, I know there are a lot of farm managers within the company. How often are they meeting up to make budgeting and farming decisions? Is it weekly? What sort of your top tip on advice for farmers around that?
Yeah, we've got 11 farm managers. We've got 110 full-time staff on farm, and probably 30 in support. We generally try and get our farm managers together face to face twice a year. We'll get the whole business together on probably a biannual basis, and in the regions we try and get together twice a year with all of the farm teams together twice a year. We meet via Teams monthly as managers, and I meet with my farm managers weekly, either in person or on Teams as well, just to keep a check on production scenarios, where we're going, marketing scenarios, and make sure it's a big business. You know, we're producing close to 500,000 tonnes of grain a year, and when things start going the wrong direction, it can make a very big difference. So we've just all got to keep our finger on the pulse, but also support managers in the decisions that they're being forced to make because of what the environment's putting in front of them.
Yeah, thank you, John. My next question: how have, when I say they, the company, you, John, managed mental health in the teams at Warrakiri over time, and how has this changed? Some people might have the opinion that a corporate-run farm doesn't have the added stress that a family one does, but I probably would beg to differ, given all the number crunching pressures that you have. So yeah, I was just wondering if you could shed some light on how you manage that with your farm managers and the decisions that they have to make.
Yeah, it certainly can be a pressure cooker for our farm teams, because there's a lot of people looking at their performance, a lot of people expecting things from them, and sometimes it's out of their control, whatever's happening. And I can't say we've always been perfect as a business at managing mental health, but we did have a bit of a strategic review back in 2016, and we really did focus on looking after our people as our number one priority. We always had an enterprise employee assistance program, an EAP, in the background available to all our staff and families, which was a 24/7 assistance line they could call for personal, financial, mental well-being. Yeah, lots and lots of even exercise-based programs, things like that. It was very impersonal, and after our strategic review in 2018, we made the decision to appoint in I think in 6 regions. We've actually put on a full-time rural psychologist who actually comes around our farms 2 to 3 times a year, spends some time with the farm teams, and they just have that personal relationship, and they're there for the farm teams whenever they need to be. It's a really important piece to keep our people well. We have lost a few people who didn't reach out, who really did get cooked in the system, and it's pretty sad. They're very capable people that just didn't know when to ask for help or where to get it. So we've certainly invested heavily in trying to look after our people, and that's dovetailed in very well with the new psychosocial risk laws that are presented to employers now, and that's a really important piece for people to understand, that we are responsible for people's well-being on farm, and to make sure that you're in a respectful and a fair workplace, and that you know, when the pressure cooker's on, we've got somewhere for them to reach out to get some help.
Thank you, John. I will now go on to some more personal-based questions. Based on your experience, what advice would you give to other producers about balancing the practical demands of managing a farm through a drought whilst looking after your own mental well-being?
I think an understanding for me was that you actually can't manage what you can't control. That took me a while. I started managing farms when I was 27, and I was bulletproof, and I was going to fix every problem that we came across. But when the environment doesn't give you moisture, there's not much you can do about it. And one of the challenges that we do face in the southern region is that by the end of June, 80% of our annual costs are already gone. They're already in the ground. It's very hard for us to get our cost control sorted after June, and you don't really know you're in a drought. We're a winter dominant rainfall region. You don't really know you're in a drought till you start getting into August. So you've got to give people the space to say, hey, you've done your best. You've set things up for success. You haven't overdone it, but it's out of your control now. So understanding that things are out of your control is very important.
Thank you, John. Really, really good points. What's one lesson the drought has taught you that you now apply in everyday farm management? even when it's a good season?
Yeah, I'll go on with what David and Jen already said. Like, cover is king. Like, if we can keep resilient ground cover in our system, yeah, it buffers a lot of environmental variables, be it heat or rain or even too much rain. It can give you a really good yeah, a really good bit of protection. Yeah, the soil's precious. We all know it's precious. Yeah, keep on top of weeds, keep your ground cover sorted, and a lot of things will look after themselves.
Thank you, John. We have time for one more question. This is another one that's sort of made the rounds in other ways and shapes and forms, but maintaining focus on long-term goals, both, you know, obviously farming and financial. How do you keep that momentum in the thick of survival mode within yourself and the farm managers that you are championing?
Yeah, I guess it's the long-term focus of farming, isn't it? Like, we've been around for 30 years. Next year we want to be around for another 30 years. So it's the understanding that you know, a lot of things you've invested this year, they may not come to fruition, but they're actually going to add value to you next year as well. And you think of the nitrogen banking story and nutrition banking, you know, you haven't wasted money. You might have some savings next year based on what you've done this year. So don't beat yourself up about it.
Yeah, very good advice, John. Thank you. Thank you, and thank you to all the panelists for sharing your insights with us tonight on the webinar. It's one of my biggest sayings is that you can't sell a secret, and peer-to-peer learning is the best way to keep lifting that bottom line and improving your farm management, whether that be, you know, it doesn't have to just be for drought, it can be for everything. So thank you all again. We now have a few minutes for some questions. So if you haven't already, please place your questions in the Q&A function. Thank you, Ella, for changing the slide. And we will get into the Q&A function. Just give me one moment. David, this one is for you. Being a mixed farmer with a variety of crops, do you also run any stock to utilise the stubble that you retain as a feed source over summer?
Kate, yeah, no, simply no, we don't. Ground cover is really important for us. So no, we don't run any other livestock on our cropping paddocks.
That's fine. Thank you, David. Jen, next question is for you. You mentioned update and upgrade with your infrastructure and machinery to increase production and efficiency, but where do you place the importance of stock and domestic water supply during dry times to achieve this?
Yeah, look, you know, if you don't have water, that's pretty big thing with livestock, but it goes back to your wish list and biggest bang for your buck. If we've certainly put in more domestic water supply, we did some of that just 2 years ago, but we also we set it up so the spray rig can get access to that watering point for spraying as well. But yeah, I mean, I heard in the south that was actually probably the biggest thing for people running out of water. We're very, very fortunate up in the Moree district, being on an artesian basin, we don't face those challenges, and that's certainly a massive one. So it may be a very, very big priority for your operation. So depends on your operation, really, and the value, you know, your livestock versus your cropping enterprise, what's making money. You know, there's at the moment the cropping enterprise with the decrease in grain prices, that, you know, and red meat value, the dollars per kilo for red meat certainly changing their dynamics there. So being a mixed farm, whether you put a little bit more weight behind your red meat enterprises and back off your cropping, there is talk around that, but certainly everything's cyclical. So yeah, if that answers your question, hopefully.
Thanks, Jen. I think that is sufficient for sure. Thank you. Hi, John. We have a question for you. Given the importance of soil amelioration on your properties, what sources of information or advice would you recommend to cropping producers looking to overcome soil constraints in their own cropping enterprise? Great question.
Look, we're very strong on our independent agronomy teams that support us. They're big drivers of our soil amelioration programs throughout the whole business. But yeah, certainly, as Jen said earlier, like attending field days and stuff has been a massive source of inspiration and encouragement in what we do on our soil amelioration. Getting out and about, traveling to different regions. Like we've learned a lot from the Eyre Peninsula that we now do in the Victorian Mallee. We've learned a lot from the Victorian Mallee that we now do at Merredin in Western Australia. So it's making sure you keep your eyes and ears open to opportunities and problems that are being overcome in areas that may be similar to yours or may be different to yours, but the solution may work for your soils as well. But yeah, there's certainly some very clear chemical constraints that we can identify easily through soil testing. But yeah, it's just knowing where to look and knowing what to look for.
Thank you. That is a very good answer and very good point. John, I have another question for you. This is from Martin. John, I love the way that you prioritize ground cover to conserve soil moisture. You mentioned that you use strategic lamb trading to utilize the value of summer stubbles. Could you please explain further what drought relevant value do you get from this?
Look, at our lamb trading is probably more focused on our grazing brown manures. So we run grazing mixes rather than Longfellow, and so most of our livestock is based on our grazing vetch mixes. We do utilise them through our stubbles, and we're lucky that our Riverina farms are 100% chaff deck on their headers, which provide really good nutrition trails for sheep, so they don't actually tend to overgraze the stubble. They tend to just stay on the wheel tracks and eat the chaff deck lines. That's been a massive win and a real boost for mouse management as well, because any grain that does get lost over the header is in those chaff deck trails, and the sheep just vacuum it up. So we have been getting some pretty good growth rates in the stubbles, but we're really only utilising that to accumulate numbers to go onto our grazing manures once they get some feed in March.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you again to all our panelists. That concludes our Q&A session. You will see the feedback form up on the screen. It is very crucial for us to maintain momentum in, I suppose, producing more webinars like tonight's. So if you could please scan the QR code, there is a link in the chat that takes you to the feedback form also. So we really appreciate you filling this out. As I said again, it helps us plan new events and helps us deliver content that you would like to see in the future. I would also like to remind everyone next week's webinar in this series will be running on Tuesday night, the 11th of November at 7 p.m. And there is also the QR code in the bottom right-hand corner of the feedback slide if you would like to scan that also once you're done, and you can sign up for next week's webinar. But thank you all again for joining us tonight, and thank you for our New South Wales panellists. It's been really great to hear all of your tips and tricks and lessons learned, and it's greatly appreciated. Thank you.